Toxic work environments are ghetto. So today we're talking about how to get out of them. Go ahead and cue my theme music. Welcome to Untoxify Your Relationship. Here we will talk about all things healthy and how to get that toxic mess out of you and your partnership. I'm your host, Melissa Webb, a practicing licensed mental health therapist with 10 years experience. All right, let's go ahead and hop into it. Hey y'all, so again, we have a paint and sip for our couples. It's going down April 26th. Yes, we have in-person VIP for my folks that's in St. Louis. And if you're not in St. Louis, we have a virtual option for you on the same day, same time, 1 o'clock to 4 p.m. It's going to be a great experience. On the website, I'm actually going to put what we're painting. I've been talking to the painter. We have something very exciting for you all. So be looking out for that this week. Tickets are on sale. We only have a limited amount of seats. So go ahead and check it out and let me know what you think. Go ahead, buy that ticket. I want to see my folks do some painting online. I know some of y'all are not in St. Louis. So Australia, where you at? Go ahead, buy that ticket. Anyway, so today we're talking about toxic work environments. And baby, let me tell you, I have had my fair share of crazy work environments. I worked at a place, I will not name the name. I won't even say if it was nonprofit or not, or for profit. I'm not even going to go there, but I will just let y'all know. I worked at a place where the CEO was literally unhinged. I was middle management, so I had to go to these meetings. And to be quite honest, the meetings were always entertaining because they were full of drama all the time. And this was like once a month meetings. And the CEO would come in and just be like, hey, I'm just going to go down the line and let y'all know if I'm going to fire you. And I'm like, whoa. Wait a minute, we just started. And that's just what he did. And HR would be in the room like, yo, you can't do that. He's like, well, I'm going to do something where I'm going to fire people. And what I noticed with the CEO, everybody was trying to keep him hinged when his character was unhinged. So I saw a couple of different people with the CEO. We had people who were walking on eggshells. So that was the people who were passive, or they would pacify him, right? Basically just to be like, oh, it's okay. Just trying to get him to stay literally on the hinge. Then there were some people who started to imitate the CEO. So we had some people who were becoming toxic because they were hanging around a toxic person. And then we had some folks that wanted to make a change and wanted to do something different. Those are my different makers, my chain breakers, my people who want to do something different, want to break the generational curses and all of that, right? So we had 3 different people. To be the change maker, you have to buck against a toxic system. Because if you don't, then you're going to either become the person that pacifies the toxic person or the toxic environment, or you're going to become the person who becomes toxic because you stay in the environment and you start to become what you stay in. That's why I say birds of a feather flock together. Yeah, so if you're flocking with some toxic birds, more than likely their feathers are going to get on you and you're going to become toxic. So I just want to let y'all know that we serve an anti-oppressive God. We see this when we look at Moses and Pharaoh in the Bible. God was like, let my people go, because what you're not going to do is oppress my people. And when it comes to being in the workplace and standing up against a toxic work environment or a toxic boss or even a toxic coworker, you gotta know, like, this aligns with standing up for justice, setting boundaries, and refusing to conform to unhealthy workplace norms. You can do this by honoring God and also honoring yourself. That is something I always tell my clients. It's like, yo, you have to honor yourself, because when you don't honor yourself, you do yourself a disservice. And so that means sometimes standing up for yourself and saying, like, I will stand for this no more. Let my people go. And keep it moving, right? And that can look different in a work environment. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about what to do when authority becomes oppressive. Because A lot of times these bosses and CEOs and VPs and C-suite people, or even just a manager, they can be oppressive. And that is not what we want when we go to work. We should not be going to work in oppressive environments. We're also going to talk about how to deal with toxic coworkers, because that's a whole thing, and when to leave. When leaving is best, because sometimes God don't want you in that environment. Sometimes we convince ourselves, God want me here so I can make a difference. That may be true, but also that may not be true. So we're going to talk about when is it best to get the heck up out of there. So let's go ahead and hop into it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what to do when your authority becomes oppressive. In the Bible, there are times when the system was oppressive and people defied the system. So we got in Exodus in chapter 1, when Pharaoh gave a decree to kill all the baby boys that were Hebrew, because he feared that the Hebrews would grow and take over. So basically, let me give you a little background. So Joseph got to Egypt, when he had the dream, and then the brothers threw him in the pit, and then he ended up in Egypt, and then he became prime minister of Egypt right up under Pharaoh, and he was running things. His brothers came there and they were saved, right? Because it was a famine in the land. That's why they came there. So they was there for a while. So Joseph, all the brothers, Jacob, they all died in Egypt. And then a generation died. The next, a new king came in Egypt, and he didn't know Joseph. So he was like, I don't know what y'all talking about this Joseph fellow, but all I do know is these Israelites, they keep multiplying. If they keep multiplying, they may take over. So he gave this decree to kill all the baby boys. Shout out to the midwives. The Hebrew midwives, they was like, nah, bro, we ain't doing that. So what the Hebrew midwives did, they disobeyed his decree because they feared God. They was like, what we not going to do is do what you tell us to do, because I fear my God more than I fear you. And that's where some of y'all problem is. Y'all fear y'all bosses more than you fear God. Y'all act like God, y'all bosses are the ones who is going to strike you down, and they the ones that say, well, now you get in the kingdom of heaven. No, God does that. So stop putting your boss above God, because at that point, you're making your boss an idol. And what God don't want is for y'all to make anyone an idol above him. So stop making your boss an idol. Stop doing that. So these midwives feared God enough where they did not make Pharaoh their idol. They made God their God and was like, what we going to do? We going to trust in God, and we not going to trust in Pharaoh. And because of this, God blessed the midwives for going against Pharaoh. The other thing in chapter 1 in Exodus, because all this happened in chapter 1, it said that even in the midst of oppression, right, the Hebrews kept multiplying. So this king came along, and he oppressed the Hebrews, because before they wasn't oppressed, they was chilling. Then this dude came along, he wanted to put them in slavery. And so even in the midst of this oppression, the Hebrews kept multiplying. And all I see in that is, in the midst of oppression, God multiplied the Israelites, which means there was a blessing in the oppression. There was a blessing even in the oppression. So even if you're being oppressed right now by your job or by something else, God is still blessing. He's still in the blessing business. So don't think that God has left you, because he has not, because God is still in the midst. It just may look crazy around you, but at the end of the day, as long as you have God as your source, as God as your center, and you are making God your God and not putting other things above God, God got you. Just like he had these midwives. So don't think just because the world crazy right now, God ain't got you, because he do. And don't make fear your idol either, because I'm not even going to go there with what's going on in America. However, don't let fear be your idol either. Let God be your God, and let God handle everything around you, okay? Another person that I liked in the Bible who did not care about the oppression that was being done at the time was Daniel. Daniel was his own person. He feared God more than he feared the king or anybody else. So at this point, the Israelites have been captured by Babylon. And these people didn't like Daniel, so they tried to get him caught up. They brought a decree to the king, And pretty much Darius was like, he signed this decree, basically said that the people could not pray to a god or to a human. Daniel said, say less. I'm going to go upstairs to my upper room, open up the window. The window was open and this man prayed 3 times during the day and was loud about it. And he did not care. So Daniel did not care. This is why Daniel got thrown into the lion's den, right? Because these people put that decree in place. Daniel was like, say less, let me pray out loud so y'all can know that I'm praying. Because what y'all not going to do, I'm not going to put y'all above my God, because I know my God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all I could ask, think, or imagine. So that means if I'm going to serve my God, that means God's going to take care of me. You know what I'm saying? And these people knew that God was going to take care of them. That's why they did what they did, and they didn't make these people their idol. So how do you buck the system? How do you buck the system when you have an oppressive boss who is just out of control and they're doing a lot of toxic things? Well, you can challenge unfair policies, unethical leadership, and a toxic workplace. Just make sure that you're doing it in a way where you're not going around cussing everybody out, but you can go around saying like, hey, I don't like it. I don't like this. This policy does not make sense. You can stand up for yourself. You can speak up and say what needs to be said without dishonoring God. You can advocate for yourselves and others. This is what the midwives did. The midwives was like, yeah, we're not doing it. I mean, they basically lied and said like, oh, the Hebrew women are different than Egyptian women. And so by the time we get there, the baby already out. So we don't know. We can't really kill anybody. Basically, they advocated for themselves and for the Hebrew women. And you can also set clear boundaries with unreasonable bosses. Remember, respect is mutual. It's not one-sided. So you don't have to respect them, but they're not respecting you. Set some clear boundaries. See if you can change departments. See if you can get a new boss. Go above them and say, hey, this is what's going on. You have to advocate for yourself because who else is going to advocate for you if you don't advocate for yourself? So make sure that you're advocating for yourself, setting boundaries, and challenging policies, because that's a real thing. Because I am a challenger, and I will challenge policies in a second. This is why I work for myself. All right, number 2, how do we work with toxic coworkers? When I was putting together this episode, the first thing that came to my mind was that verse in Mark that says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And this can also get messy, right? Because we know people are messy because people are not perfect. And so you deal with imperfect people. You get 2 imperfect people around each other, and then there's just bound to be mess. That's just humans, right? That's just how it is because we're not perfect. So this doesn't mean that we have to tolerate their toxicity, right? When it says love your neighbor as yourself. What that does mean is I can love you from a distance, meaning that I can set boundaries and not really have to deal with you because I need my peace as well. And since you are doing too much, you can stay over there and I can stay over here. I can still acknowledge you as a person, as a coworker, but that doesn't mean that I have to interact with you in that way. I don't have to kiki with you. We ain't got to go get happy hour drinks. We ain't got to do none of that. I can be like, here's the report and go back to my desk. This is just like last week when I talked about honoring toxic parents. You can notice them. You can recognize that they are a parent, but that doesn't necessarily mean that is blind obedience, right? So honoring is not blind obedience. You don't have to deal with the toxic stuff. Just like with people, you can love them from a distance and not have to deal with the toxic stuff. The other verse that came to mind was in Proverbs 22 that says, do not make friends with a hot-tempered person. Do not associate with one easily angered, or you may learn their ways. So basically, guard yourself around toxic people, because what can happen is their toxic behaviors can rub off on you. This is why we need to have that space, that distance. This is why you shouldn't really get into the drama and the politics of work, because next thing you know, you're like, oh, I'm becoming like them. Again, birds of a feather flock together. So watch who you're around, really discern the environments that you're in and how you need to operate in those environments and how you need to operate with those people, because Not everybody at work needs to be your friend. They just need to be work people, and that's it. Now, have I made friends from work? Absolutely. And I'd have a pretty decent vetting process where I know, yeah, I can be cool with you, and no, I can't be cool with you. So how do you buck the system? Well, you do it by not engaging in workplace drama, like I said, call out discrimination, bullying, or unethical practices. And also, you can shift the culture by being a healthy one. Again, will you stand out like a sore thumb? Absolutely. But I mean, that's what happens when you're the healthy one. And sometimes people don't understand that, and that's okay. And this is how we get to the third part, right? When you're so healthy and everybody don't like it, and you're just like, oh, do I need to stay here? And that's the next part. When leaving is best. When do you know you need to leave a toxic work environment? Well, this verse came to mind when I was thinking about putting this together. The verse in Matthew where it says, if anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, leave that home or town and shake the dust off your feet. This was Jesus talking to the 12 disciples when they were finna go out, and they went out 2 by 2 to basically do some preaching. And Jesus was giving them directions on what to do when they go to these towns. And this was one of the directions that Jesus gave them. And I think what Jesus is saying when it comes to workplace environments is sometimes the best thing to do is to leave and not take the mess with you. So what does that look like when it comes to working? Well, sometimes it's best to leave a toxic environment. If it's toxic, why are we still there, right? In other words, let it go. Let it go. Let go of the workplace. Let go of the need to prove yourself to your workplace. Let go of what could have happened, like the coulda, the shoulda, the woulda. Like, I should have said this to my boss. I could have said this to my boss. And it also means letting go and like releasing that closure that you're waiting on, like, or that apology that you're waiting on from like your boss or your coworkers or something like that. And it also means letting go physically of stuff from the job. So if you left the job, it's okay to leave the physical stuff. And I give an example. I left a job and I literally, so they had t-shirts or whatever, workplace t-shirts. I left that job. I started a fire in my fire pit and I burnt all them t-shirts, all of them. Fire was going good too. I said it was something wrong with them t-shirts because that fire was going too good. But that was me letting go of the workplace, right? Because if I or you, right, was to keep holding on, wearing the t-shirts to bed. I mean, who don't love a good t-shirt to bed? But like wearing the t-shirts to bed and like wearing them around or keeping my work badge or whatever the case may be, it can tie you down physically, emotionally, and mentally. This can also create bitterness and emotional baggage. So then when you go get a new job, you looking up, you over here like carrying this emotional baggage with you from this last place, and then you're projecting, right, negative things onto people, and people like, why are you acting like that? Because you have not healed from the last workplace, the last work environment, or the last toxic work environment you were at. Other people are paying a price for something that they have nothing to do with, and that's not cool either. So when it's time to leave, it's time to leave. Leave everything there. Shake the dust off your feet, like Jesus said, and move on, right? Like, you don't have to stay there. You don't have to bring all that stuff with you. Leave it at that toxic place and go about your business. Go get your healing and do something else with your life. Please don't hold on to that mentally and replay these scenarios in your head and all of that. You don't have to do that. Leave it, because that's what Jesus said. That is direct order from Jesus, not from Melissa. Also, the verse of there's a season for everything in Ecclesiastes. You got to remember that sometimes your seasons end at jobs and God is trying to call you to somewhere else, but yet you trying to stay in the old season when God is like, I'm trying to get you somewhere else. So when you start staying places where you're not supposed to be, it really becomes toxic. It really becomes like, it's almost like you're fighting, right? You're fighting where God wants you to be at. And he's just like, why are you fighting? Just leave. Like, why are you doing all this hard work where you don't have to? You can just leave. You need to recognize when a job is harming you. When you go to work and you in the parking lot crying before you go inside, you may want to leave, right? If you go to work and your boss is belittling you, or you got someone like bullying you at the workplace, and you go on the extra mile talking to HR and all of that, and it still hasn't stopped, you may want to think about leaving. Like, you really have to think about, like, I get all workplaces have their thing, and when it becomes harmful, you have to be able to say, this is harmful for me, because at that point, who cares about the paycheck? I care more about your mental and well-being at that point. Like, you got to figure out when's it best for me to get up out of here. Seek God's guidance. Ask God, is it time for me to go? Should I stay here? Should I leave? God will definitely let you know if it's time to go or if it's not. I always stress to people, your job will be okay if you leave. I hate when people be like, well, if I leave, who gonna do it? I don't know, someone else. This is for me working in management and me having to fire and hire people, or even people just leaving. And I will always have conversations with my employees like, if you gonna go, go. We will find somebody else to do your job. Sorry, but you're not that important, right? You're not the only person who can do this job description, because it was someone before you and it will definitely be someone after you, right? So don't think that you are the savior of this job position, because you're not. Anybody can do this job. It's just not you. So don't think that, oh my God, if I leave, the company's going to be in disarray. Let them be in disarray. That has nothing to do with you. Because once you leave, again, we're getting the dust off our feet. We're shaking it off. So that you ain't got nothing to do with that job once you leave, right? So who cares? They will figure it out. Move on with your life. And you got to trust that God will provide. If God is telling you to leave, if Jesus is saying shake the dust off your feet, shake it off, dust it off, dust your shoulder off, whatever. If God is telling you to do that, you got to realize that God will provide. He would not send you somewhere. He would not tell you to quit. He would not tell you to go off and go start your own business if he already had provision lined up for you. God is not a God of like, let me see if they actually going to do this and then let me figure out what's going to happen after that. God already got everything planned out. So you have to trust the God that you serve, that he is going to take care of you. Because if you serve a God that's Jehovah Jireh and you like, he's my provider, but you ain't really believe that he your provider in the situation, then what are we doing? Why are we serving this God if you don't even believe it? And it may just be a test, right? It may be God testing you to see, are you really practicing what you preach? Because you preach God is Jehovah Jireh, and he telling you to quit your job, and you just like, well, I don't know if you're going to provide. And what are we doing? What are we doing? Are we putting our job above God? Are we making the job an idol, right? Because if you are, God just may be trying to break that. He's trying to see, like, do you really believe that I will provide? Do you really trust me? Do you really trust the plan that I have for your life? And this may be a way he doing it. I don't know. None of that was in my notes, so I don't know who that was for. I don't know who that was for. But you have to trust the process. You have to trust God, and you have to trust him in the middle, because if he do tell you to leave, that sounds great, especially like, I'm getting out of a toxic work environment, yay. But 3 months later, when the money dried up, the 401k dries up, and you looking at your account like, look, God, you told me to quit my job. I got $2,000 here and I got bills due. Are you going to trust that he's going to provide? And this might be where God has you, right? So all that to say, we don't want to be oppressed by our jobs. Again, God is the anti-oppressive God, and he will not allow you to be oppressed at a job. So follow these steps, right? Follow the steps and know that you don't have to stand for this. You can advocate for yourself. You can put boundaries in place, and you can leave. Like, that is a real option for you to do. Leave your job. And if God is telling you to stay a little bit longer, stack some paper, okay, cool. But if he's saying leave, just go and trust him. Trust that he knows what he's doing. Trust that he has the provision. Trust that he has the resources and maybe even another job lined up or whatever it is that he wants you to do. Trust that it's there. You just have to follow him and get the directions from him. That's it. That's the post. Thanks for listening, guys. This was a little bit longer. A lot of this was not in my notes. So, again, I don't know who this was for. I just go with where the Holy Spirit leads me, and hopefully that can help someone who does listen. Thanks for listening. Again, episodes drop on Monday. Shout out to all my listeners. I absolutely love you guys. You guys are great. And keep listening. Give me a couple of stars, drop some reviews. We all love stars and reviews. Stay classy, stay non-toxic, and I will see you next time. Peace. Thank you for listening. Go ahead and share this episode with your family and friends. Thank you, and see you next time.